So welcome to Braille Adventures. My name's Elizabeth Symington. I'm a transcriber in TVI. And today, one of my classmates from college is here, Joey Hernandez. She's a partially sighted painter, a skateboarder, and an O&M specialist. Well, thank you so much, Joey, for being here.
Happy to be here.
Okay. So before we get started, do you mind giving us your full name and what are your pronouns?
Sure, my name is Josephine Hernandez, but I go by Joey. Josephine's just too many syllables. And my pronouns are she, her, and they, them. Either or works.
Awesome, cool. And mine are she, her.
Cool.
Great. Yeah, so do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So I am a partially blind visual artist. I have been working with acrylic paints for about 10 years now, and I originally taught myself how to paint after losing a significant portion of my sight as a teenager to LHON, or Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. Fun fact about that, I was originally misdiagnosed, and so I didn't get the correct diagnosis until a couple years ago. And I fell in love with painting, and now that is just like one of my favorite passions. And I'm very big on uh, inclusive art. I think that's something that is very important to me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Uh, so do you mind describing your art style and do you have a favorite medium?
Yes, so I work with acrylic and acrylic wash. I would say they're both tied for like my favorite medium because um, acrylic wash is kind of like if acrylic and gouache paints had a baby and the baby was better than both of the parents. And it's really fun to play with. But acrylic will also always have my heart just because that was like the first major paint that I ever used. And so I love them both dearly. Um, for my style, I would say that I am very impressionism inspired, um, where I like to do representational works, usually of figures doing different things. And I tend to use more of like a loose brushstroke. Um, and I really like painting people, sometimes animals, um, and sometimes still lives, but mostly people, and especially people who are in the middle of an activity. I just think that is so fun to do.
I'm going to share my screen and hop over to your website so that people can get a visual. And something I absolutely love about your website is that you have included detailed image descriptions. And over on your YouTube channel, using your voice instead of a computerized voice, you read your image descriptions. So
Mhm.
I just love it that you have accessibility planned in mind.
Thank you. I
Um,
Accessibility is really important to me, and that's part of how I get to enjoy other people's art. When other people make their artwork accessible with image descriptions, I feel like I am fully included. So I want other people to get that same experience.
I love that. I'm going to jump ahead and change the order of our questions since we're talking about accessible art exhibits. So what's your philosophy about it? You've touched on that. Have you been involved with showing your art and then making it accessible for the public?
Yes. So right now I'm planning for a solo exhibit at the James F. Ronnie Gallery at the Fullerton Museum Center next year. And for it, I plan to make the show fully accessible. So every single piece is going to have a image description available in both large print and Braille, and a QR code linking to an audio version of the image description. And there also will be tactile versions of each of the pieces. For the Braille and the tactile art, I make all of this by hand. I do, it's a labor of love. And currently, if anybody wants access to my work prior to the show, and it doesn't just have to be the work limited to the show, it could be any of the work that I've created, I will mail that out for free, whether they want a Braille image description or a tactile version of the painting.
Wow, that's really generous. So when
Yeah.
you're writing, oh, sorry,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
I strongly believe that more people should be able to be included in the arts. And like
Mhm.
it, I do it because it brings me joy. And the thought of other people getting to experience art when they might not have had access otherwise, that's something that's important to me.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So you said you've been painting for 10 years. What inspired you to get into it?
I started painting because of my visual impairment. So something that is I don't think talked about enough is that visual impairment looks weird. Like when you if you have never experienced it firsthand, you might think, oh, it's straightforward. You either start to see black or you start to see blurry or whatever. When that's not the case for a lot of us. I mean, yes, I do see blurry, but I also constantly see neon lights that aren't actually there, and they're always moving and, making little weird pulsations in the center of my vision. And I was so frustrated when I first started to see them because I couldn't find any vision simulations that show how I saw. And so I finally gave up on looking for vision simulations online, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna make it myself. And I did a little bit of research. I'm like, okay, what medium can I work with that is opaque? Because um, I knew that like the neon parts would have to be like on top of whatever I was painting in the background. And what other thing has vibrant neon colors available? And that led me to acrylics. And my first paintings were attempts at making vision simulations. They weren't very good. I thought they were great, but upon retrospect, um, but I fell in love with the medium and I just had so much fun using it that I'm like, I want to use this all the time.
That's awesome. So how often do you think you paint? It's about every day, a
I
couple times a week.
I try to do it a couple times a week. Sometimes I get in these funks where like I end up painting days on end and I'm like, this is the only thing that I can do. This is the most important thing in the world. And then I might ignore other things that I need to be doing. Um, so it just depends.
Yeah, I remember you sent me text. You're like, I made this painting next day. I made this painting. And then this other one, I'm like, this is incredible. It's you're just cranking them out. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, another thing about me is I recently, like within the past couple of years, learned that I also have ADHD. And so sometimes I get in like the hyper focus zone where it's like, this is the only thing I can focus on right now. And hence, sometimes you get a ton of painting dumps.
That's great. Yes, ADHD can be very handy for that.
Hmm.
So do you mind describing your artistic process? Do you work from photo reference? Is this your imagination? Do you set up still lifes? What do you like to do?
I tend to work off of photo references. I usually work off of either pictures that I take myself or I will be inspired by videos. I'm often inspired by videos, especially for the series that I've been working on for the past year of skaters. I like to look through and find videos of blind skateboarders, and I pay attention to those to see like, okay, is there any interesting poses? Is there anything, cool going on? Is there like a weird color scheme in this video? And then from there, then I get out my canvas. And something I've been doing in recent years is I like to start with just a plain color on the background because I know there's probably going to be portions of my painting where like the canvas isn't fully covered, and so I'd rather have a bright color underneath that pokes through instead of like, just plain white canvas. So then afterwards I start to paint the canvas with like I've I've been using like a magenta paint underneath for my undercoat. But I've used yellow, I've used blue, I've used all different ones, basically whatever paint I have lying around. Um, and then afterwards, I do what I like to call a coordinated series of mistakes until I end up with a painting that I like.
I love that. It's so playful and just forgiving. You're like, I'm going with the flow.
You know what? That's what I love about acrylic. Acrylic, if you make a mistake, no big deal. Just paint over it. Paint and repaint. That's all you got to do.
Totally. Yeah, I like acrylic because it dries quickly, but then you can also build up layers.
Hmm.
So I noticed that on your paintings, you sign them in Braille, and I was curious about what it says and why you put it there.
This this is going to be such a cheesy answer, but honestly, my initials in Braille just look really cool. Because they're a mirror of each other. So my initials are JCH, and the J is a backwards H, and then the C is, even. And so I just like doing JCH because that's my name and it looks really cool.
I love that. I just went back to your website and we can see your image is with your signatures in the bottom right corner. And you're right. Yeah, it does look really good in Braille.
Uh, and I have started kind of using that as like my logo as well. So if you're ever scrolling through some of my things and like you notice like the favicon, the little icon at the top in the search bar, that there is the JCH because I again, maybe I'm vain. I just think it looks cool.
I'm stopping to share just for a moment. So you had mentioned that with your vision, you're kind of seeing like fireworks, bright splotches of color. Um, how do you adapt your painting so that um, you can see the whole canvas?
So, the interesting thing is I can never see the whole canvas all in one go. I look at tiny sections at a time. So my biggest adaptive tool that I use is an adjustable metal easel. So it's for me that helps more with like the blurriness. And I see better when things are about 2 to 3 inches from my face. And so with an adjustable metal easel, I can hold my canvas as close as I like, and then I can move it up and down as I work on different sections of the painting. Um, and that is probably, again, biggest help for me. I use a bunch of other strategies as well. So sometimes I'll use non-visual strategies. So for example, I label all of my paint tubes with tactile stickers. So that way I can quickly identify which paint is which. And even though I do have, color vision, my color vision isn't great. And also I'm working with acrylic, so it's a fight against time. And so anything to decrease the amount of time I spend, on things that aren't as important, the better. So instead of having to magnify, all of my paint tubes and figure out which one's which, I could just feel it and be like, ah, rubber band, dioxazine purple. Ah, yes, panda sticker. That one is my magenta.
I
And
love that. It's your own personal code.
oh yeah, I every time I go to like Daiso or Dollar Tree, I'm always on the lookout for more stickers.
I have a huge sticker collection too, thanks to Daiso.
Daiso's great.
And then what about, do you use a paint palette? Do you label the little dishes? What do you like to put the paint onto?
So what I use is a paint palette, and I get like the cheapest ones, the ones you can get at Dollar Tree, because those ones work the best for me. They work great. What I do is I pay attention to where I squeeze out my paint tubes. So I know, for example, like I could have my yellow and then my unbleached titanium white and then my ultramarine. And I know, like, okay, my ultramarine is going to be the one that it's most to the right. And I know that my yellow is going to be the one that's most to the left. And then if I count one over, then I'm able to find my unbleached titanium white. And I'm able to keep track of it things that way, which is really helpful. Sometimes the paints look similar in the palette. So I will focus on whatever paint I'm able to like see the clearest. So for example, if I know that I only used one red during my a paint session, then I know that I can use that red as like a reference point for everything else. Um, and yeah, I find that that's super helpful. And uh, it also helps too because I tend to use like I thin out my paints. And I tend to go for like a more watery consistency. And so having the wells also helps keep that in place.
That's really clever. Uh, I was thinking about your art exhibit that you're preparing. In my mind, I'm a little ADHD too. Was thinking about the tactile images you're making. How are you going to make tactile images of your paintings?
So what I have been doing currently, I'm going to say there's two processes. There is the process that I'm currently doing, and then the process that I hope to do. So the process that I'm currently doing, I got a tactile graphics kit off of Amazon, and I know they sell it on Maxi Aids as well, the same kit, but it is essentially like a clipboard with foam on top. and it comes with these plastic sheets and a stylus. And I just make line drawings with the stylus onto the plastic sheet, and then it raises up on top. And I've been doing that by hand for each of my pieces. But the goal, what I would hope to do someday, is I am currently saving up for an embosser, which for anybody who's unfamiliar, I'm certain people who are fans of Braille Adventures are familiar with a Braille with an embosser, but just in case, I like to think of it as like a Braille printer, where you can print out Braille documents or tactile graphics. And my goal is to save up for an embosser so I can make higher quality tactile graphics. Because as I'm making these by hand, you know, they are made of love, but there are mistakes that come with that. So I would like to be able to provide better ones in the future.
It's like you're making twice as much art for your art show. You have your acrylics, and then you have your tactiles. Uh, and you also have a Ko-Fi going. So in case people aren't familiar with Ko-Fi, it's similar to Kickstarter. So if anyone wants to help donate and help Joey get an embosser, I will put the link below. So you can go over there and help her get more accessible art out there into the world.
Yeah, I would greatly appreciate anything, even if it's just $1 donated or, even just a nice message. Greatly appreciated. And again, I just want to make the art world more inclusive for as many people as possible.
And I'm curious about the Braille. How are you transcribing it? Are you using a Perkins? Are you doing it on the computer?
I'm using a Perkins. When I graduated from undergrad, I treated myself and got a Perkins Brailler. And I the funny thing is I'm not very good at Braille. I'm pretty decent at reading it, but at typing it, so many typos. So I have gone through stacks of paper because of typos. But I am writing it out all by hand, and I'm writing it in grade one for two reasons. One, because I know that some people who are early Braille learners will start off with grade one and they might not be fully fluent in grade two yet. And two, I know I would make so many mistakes with grade two.
So that's another reason or another use for the embosser. You could put in the computer and then you could send the file off to basically the Braille printer, and that would just speed up your whole process.
And there would be less typos.
That too. I had a teacher, she would call them Braillos. I'm like, oh, I mean, another Braillo. Yeah, it's part of life. Um, so I was curious. You just launched a blog on your website, and I've been enjoying reading that. I'm going to go back to your website, and do you mind talking more about your blog?
Sure. So the blog is called Artist Adaptation Corner. You can find it either by going to my website and then clicking on Artist Adaptation Corner, or if you just go in Google and type Artist Adaptation Corner. The blog is focused on uh, teaching strategies for blind and low vision artists to continue to create art. And it is not limited to just painting. So I talk a lot about painting because that's my experience, but I don't limit it to that. I am also getting different interviews for what I like to call artist profiles, where I speak to different artists and hear about their processes, what strategies they use, and share a little bit of their work too. Um, with this, at the beginning of every article, I make sure to mention whether the strategies are visual or non-visual, what styles they're applicable to, and then also what mediums are applicable. So that way, if you're an artist and you're like, I only like working with pastels and I only like doing abstracts, you can scroll through and find whatever thing is applicable to you and what might you can also go and read about things that might not be applicable to you and maybe find other things that you would enjoy trying out. But I want to make it easy for people to read and find what they need. For the artist profiles, those have been pretty fun to do because then I get to kind of nerd out and meet other art friends. The first two ones that I have up are Tay Noel. Her work is gorgeous. She does figurative paintings, usually of feminine figures. And then I also got to interview Chris Webb. And Chris Webb, I have been a fan of for like a long time. So it was super cool to like get to hear more about his process. And Yeah, it's just been fun to work on.
I love it that you're interviewing people in the community and like just like pooling all different ideas on how to make things accessible. And it's
Mhm.
just fun to talk to both fellow artists. So,
Oh, definitely. I have an artist that I'm going to be speaking with soon that I'm very excited about because her work is all tactile and like I'm fascinated by her stuff. It's so cool.
oops, sorry, got to hit on mute. I'm looking forward to that. That'd be great. So I am on the artwork page of your website, and I'm curious, do you have a painting that you're most proud of?
Um, there are a couple that stand out to me. So the one that I tend to use in advertising for everything, that one is called Go Inspire Yourself. It is very far down as a heads up. Um, and that is the painting. It's a self-portrait of me working at my easel in my room, and I really enjoyed working on that one. But other paintings that I am proud of, um, all clear at the approach corner is my classmates standing when we were learning about how to teach street crossings. And that one was really fun to work on because it incorporated orientation and mobility, which is a passion of mine. Um, and then I would say the last one that I am really proud of, I is a more recent one that I would like to call I Don't Care About Your Parables. And that one I enjoyed working on because I made that one out of spite. And it was nice to take kind of like a frustrated emotion and to turn that into something, that was new and beautiful. So, in case the recording didn't catch it, I went to the Los Angeles Art Show to go and get a little bit of extra inspiration, and it was really fun for the most part. Except there was one gallery that I went to, and when I went there, I was talking with the owners. It seemed nice, all of that, and I could tell there was a massive wall-size painting on the side, or on the wall, like huge, multiple feet big, and I couldn't tell what it was of because it was too far away. So I'm like, oh, let me get close and go and, see what this is. It was a painting of blind people who, mind you, they were all dressed like stereotypical unhoused people, um, leading other blind people into a ditch. And I'm like,
That's
oh,
terrible.
interesting. Not a fan of that. Uh, and so I went up to the gallery owners and I couldn't help it. And I said, like, oh, interesting piece. And one of the owners is totally writing me off, and he's like, "It's a reference to a parable. It's a reference to a historic piece," which I wanted to be like, I don't care. And then the other gallery owner's kind of floundering, and I said something along the lines of like, it's kind of ironic because I know a lot of blind people who are better at leading other blind people than sighted people. And she tries to say something along the lines of like, "Oh, often disabled people are better than we give them credit for." But what she actually says, um, is somehow so much worse. And she also said the R word. And I'm like, okay, I gotta go now. Bye. But I was just so mad at that incident. And I looked up the painting afterwards and I looked up the artist. And that painting goes for $95,000. And it just like it got me thinking again about like representation in art because that's something that I feel very strongly about. I think that there aren't enough pieces depicting blind and visually impaired people in a respectful manner. I think what happens is we're shown as helpless, we are shown as um, incapable, we are shown as tragedies. Or another thing that bothers me is when we're shown as metaphors. Um, and I'm not a fan when people will use blindness as a metaphor for some other bigger concept because I had a lot of people when I expressed anger at this painting say like, "Oh, well, it's just a metaphor." And I'm like, "Okay, um I in addition to having a visual impairment, I am also Mexican. If people were to use my Mexicanness as a metaphor for incompetence, I would not be a fan of that. I wouldn't care that it's a metaphor. So, same thing applies when it comes to vision loss, you know? Um, And so when I took that anger and I made my two pieces, I don't care about your parables, which you can guess where I got the title from. Um, and I drew two confident blind women leading each other. The braille underneath says shove it, which is short for shove it up your butt. Um, the other piece, Without Us, is a self portrait of me looking at a representation of the piece that got me really mad. It's an abstract version of it. And the title of that comes from the expression that's popular in the disability rights community of nothing about us without us. And it's a reflection upon, like, hey, this is something that was created clearly without us. Online tell me that I was overreacting and who were mad at me for saying what I had to say, but oh well. I still believe what I believe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's how the first school for the blind in the world was founded. Valentin Henri saw a spectacle in Paris where people who are blind were being made fun of. And he's like, this isn't acceptable. We can do
Hmm.
better as a society. So good for you for speaking up. I'm proud of you. And
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you will just keep speaking up and making powerful art. So I'm excited
Thank
to
you.
see what you make.
Okay, another thing that we didn't get to talk about earlier that I also wanted to mention is I paint a lot of blind people because I think, again, representation matters. I think it's important for us to be shown as human beings. Like, I paint a lot of athletes, and it's not necessarily because, like, oh, they're amazing because they're athletes or da 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 da. I'm just, I just, one, think that athletes look cool. But two, it, they're just people. They're not helpless. They're not, you know, tragedies. They are people who are just existing. And I think there needs to be a more re- real, honest depictions of people just existing. Yeah, most of the time my paintings are made out of pure joy and like I just have fun making them and that's like what gets me to do it. But um when it came to that one and Without Us, those two paintings were made out of an abundance of spite.
Love it. So we have about 9 minutes left. I was wondering, is there anything else that you would like to plug? What projects are you working on right now?
Yeah, so I think the biggest things right now are the blog, the Ko-Fi, and I have it tomorrow a webinar called Painting with Low Vision. If this comes out after that webinar, no worries. If there's an interest in it and if people enjoy it, then I plan on redoing the webinar again in the future. And the Painting with Low Vision is going to be focused specifically on tips for artists who have some functional vision, although I will cover some non-visual tips as well. And it will be focused specifically on painting, and I'm hoping that'll be a fun time. Aside from that, if people want to follow me, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch. Don't follow my Twitch. It's not good. But all of those are at Joey Hernandez Art.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joey. And on the screen right now, I have your Ko-Fi page. So if anyone wants to hop over there and donate, it will make a huge difference. Thank you so much, Joey, for being here. It has been great learning more about your process, and I look forward to your upcoming gallery show.
Thank you.